Hello, internet. I am okay. Before I introduce myself, I'm going to do a talk called "Getting Lots of Sleep," which isn't a guarantee, but I will maybe help you make a game every month. Is that something you want to do? And it's first like about me. I'm Adam. I do a game every month. It's kind of like my thing. But I've been doing it for like 30 months now, so that's pretty crazy, I guess. You might know me from No Players Online. That's like my biggest title, I guess. But I do other games as well, like Spookware. And recently I released Chain, which is also really cool, with the Haunted PS1 community, which are like a bunch of guys making, and gals, and people making a Haunted PS1 type games, which is really cool. Anyways, that's like my socials and stuff, but you don't care. Anyways, I'll get into the talk. So what I'm going to talk about: 10 tips summarizing like my approach in general to making a game every month. It's like a really rapid way of making games, and hopefully a way that'll keep you sane. But it's definitely not for everyone. So if you're really interested in trying out a game month, which I really recommend that you try, because it's really fun and it's really cool. And I mean, if you have the time for it, I mean. But it's also great because it allows yourself kind of some room to experiment with different ideas as well. But it's definitely like, it works for me, my approach to this, and it's definitely not for everyone. But I'm just going to, show you like my thoughts and stuff that I've learned over like these 30 months of making like small video games. Anyways, so first thing, Impressionism, which it's probably the wrong word for it, and it's a bit over the top. But anyways, what I mean with it is like when you're making games fast, it's like less about turning like making like a game based on a concept, but it's more like making a game to kind of explore a concept, which is basically like you need to, when you're working on the game, you need to spend as little time actually, doing like extra stuff, and constantly ask yourself like, this is what I want to be doing with the game. And like every time you're working on something and it's like, maybe this isn't like actually adding anything to the game, you should like throw it away. So constantly ask yourself, like, does the game need it? For example, when I was working on No Players Online, we did like kind of an extra game, like, and it was a really short game about walking through the forest and like finding a tape. And when I started on the game, I was like, okay, I should do forest. So I started like mapping out a huge forest, and I was like, oh, I can save time by doing like a procedural, system to make the forest like big and you can walk around. But like, once you're like in that trap and you're like thinking like, oh, I need all this stuff because it'll make the game better. Like, it really doesn't make the game better. Like, nobody cares about like the forest. That's like not what the game is about. The game is about being in a forest and finding this tape. So in the end, I just made like a small stretch of like a linear path walking through a forest and finding a tape. And it's really hard when you start like working on stuff to like realize, oh, I'm wasting my time, But it's like, try to get into that mindset. Every time like you're working more than an hour on something, just ask yourself, do I need to do this? Anyways, that also gets to my second point. I'm like a strong believer in placeholders being pretty much useless. I mean, okay, I think it's definitely good to do in like a huge game and you're like in a big team and you're working with multiple people, right? And there's like artists and they're going to add this stuff later. But I feel you kind of create like a disconnect between like how your game feels and how it looks. So try to make sure your game is like visibly moving forward at every step of development. Like, if you've been working on a game for like on your game for like 3 hours, I want to see like 3 hours like visibly like the game has progressed, And if you're constantly like whiteboxing stuff, you're really like hurting yourself, because you're gonna have to go back to that like point in development and like work on it again. And you really don't want to do that. It's just nicer if everything is just done, And like, a good way to do that is just starting with your art first. I know some people do this, but I personally am like a really big fan of it, because if you start doing the art before you did any code into your game, you kind of like at any point you're in a ready to ship point, which is good, because you want to be done with your game when you're bored of working on your game. Anyways, so doing like a mockup inside of your editor is like a good way to do that. And you kind of kickstart development your way. Like for me, it's kind of a big motivator as well, because if you start with the art, it's like, oh, this game already looks good, so now I just need to make it like move and stuff. And it's cool because like when you're thinking about your game, you already have something to think about. You can kind of see it. So, and it's also good because you can like minimize the time you spend on your assets. Because if you're doing like a mockup and you add like a bunch of shaders and post-processing, you want to get to like a point where when you add like a white box in your level, it just looks good, because you added like so many effects and shaders and stuff that it really like, it doesn't matter how shitty your art is, it's gonna look good with enough post-processing. And like the biggest reason for that is because if you like color grade your stuff really nicely, like all the colors and like shapes and like contrast, it will like all pull together in like a consistent art style, which is great, because then you don't actually have to spend time on your assets. So kind of like an example of like these last points, like the way I usually take like games. This was for the launcher I did for Chain. Chain is like a collection of games made by different developers, and I wanted to make like a launcher for it to start the games. So I started with just like the main object for like the menu, which is like these this kind of old school, CD sleeves kind of stuff. So I just use this, and this might look like a mood board, but this is actually my texture. If you're making small games, like most computers are fine with you wasting a lot of texture space. It really doesn't matter. So like this is literally my texture for the game. So you use this and you make the object first. So like my main asset is done already, right? I haven't done any code at this point. So then I put it into Unity. I had like a bunch of post-processing and shit. And okay, to be fair, I did like a little bit of code already, just because I wanted to like prove myself that this was going to work with like the sleeves as a menu. But then once you have that, it's really just, you take a screenshot of this, and put it into Photoshop, and then you just make like a mock-up of how you want to make it look. So all of this is just in Photoshop, and then you export like all these elements as images and stuff, and then you get like the full launcher or whatever. I mean, obviously there's like more to it as well, but this is how it looks in the end. So put it out, and it's just. You made all of this in Photoshop, so it's really easy. You just got to like make it move, basically. And it's nice because you already know how it's going to look, so it's easy to make it like imagine how it's going to move. Anyways, if I can go to the next slide. Okay. Anyways, I'm going to get more into like less technical stuff and more like I don't know, my philosophy for games. Like. A big one is your game doesn't like exist until it's made. I feel like a lot of people kind of forget that when they're working on stuff, because you kind of have this idea or this plan for how you want to like have the game be, and it's really hard to like let that go. So like whatever you cut during development, like it's not actually lost, because the player like they don't know any wiser. They don't play a game and be like, oh, this totally has cut content. They don't know, and that's great that they have absolutely no idea like all the stuff you were too lazy to make. So be brutal, like kill every single part of your game if it can save you any sliver of time, because your time is worth more than a game. That's like keep that in your head, and explore like one thing at a time. This is kind of really unique to like Game a Month. And I mean, fast game development in general is if you make a lot of games, like the actual impact a game has on your life becomes really small. So you don't, I feel like a lot of people are like, I want to make my dream game. And then they have to like prove themselves, like this is my magnum opus and whatever. And that's like such a dangerous thing to do, because you're putting so much like of yourself into that game. And, you know, you're really going to, if it's not going to work out, you know, you're going to like kill yourself over it, because it's, you know, you're going to spend like an eternity making the game. And, you know, by the time you spend like 2 years on it, you won't be able to quit, right? Because it's like sunk cost, you know? So for me, like creating games is often just like a way to scratch an itch. Like, if you have like an idea for a game and you think it would be like a great AAA title or whatever, like don't make the big title. Just make like a really small version of it, but it's like a finished product, and just like it'll feel good to scratch that itch, and it'll only take like a month of your time. And that's great, right? Because then afterwards you can be like, oh, you'll realize, is this actually what I, you know, want to work on? You know, do I want to invest my time in making this into a big thing? And, you know, like 90% of the time, it's not. It's really not. You might like hit something and it turns out popular, and then maybe then you want to do a big game. But it's really safe to just make a bunch of small games, just so, you know if it's like what you want to do, you know. And so, yeah, make a lot of games. Games are really no different than other art forms. So it means like you need to practice a lot of finishing stuff. Like, imagine if an artist, like, they made like one drawing every 2 years or something. That's like, I feel like that's an approach that a lot of people think you need to take in game development. Like, oh, I'll make a game, I'll spend like a year on this. I don't know. I mean, it's good to eventually get to that. I mean, if you're like an artist and you want to make a book eventually, then you probably like work on it for a year. But you need to make a lot of like sketches as well. And so it's really important to make a lot of sketches, practice a lot. And that doesn't mean like, you know, opening Unity, doing like a prototype or something, throwing it away. I mean like actually finishing something, like making a very small thing that's like some, you know, that's, it's a whole experience at the beginning and an end, you know. And, you know, the more games you'll make, the more you'll realize what it actually is you want to be making. When I started out doing games, Game Month, I wanted to only do 2D games. And like kind of really gameplay kind of stuff. And now I'm like, I don't want to do 2D games. I want to do like 3D games and like really narrative kind of stuff. So it really changes a lot because I do a lot of games. You know, you kind of realize what you really want to be doing. So that's interesting. And really important is prioritize your free time. I guess this goes back to, you know, getting the lots of sleep part of my talk. Your game like really forms itself when you aren't working on it. So like the time you spend living your life is actually the most sacred thing to make your game good. Because if you're like going to a museum or like taking a walk or like doing anything, you're constantly, you know, there are things happening. And if you have like that idea for your game in the back of your mind, you know, it'll only like form and become like a realer thing in your mind. So by the time you actually sit down on Unity or whatever it is you use to make games, you'll know exactly what you want to do. And maybe, you know, you'll catch like bad ideas earlier. So keep the concept in the back of your mind, let it simmer, and, you know, the perfect idea will come to you when you least expect it. So free time actually is probably the most time to spend on developing of the game, kind of in a weird way. Nice. And so in that same sense, you need to reward yourself with free time when you finish a game. So like I kind of forbid myself to work on a new game like 2 weeks after I finished one. And not just because it's like, oh, you need rest or whatever. I mean, that's important as well. But you also need to like have time to enjoy the fact that you finished the game. Because like if you're working on something and you know at the end you'll be able to enjoy having finished it, you know, that's like a great motivator to work on a thing in the first place, instead of just being like, oh, I'll do this because then I'll have a game, you know. That's like, I mean, that's also a part of it, but you need to be able to enjoy it as well, you know. So yeah, and the best part is if you make a game like every month, every time you're done with your game for that month, you'll know you won't be able to just like relax, but also know that you already made a game that month. And that's like the best feeling in the world, because there's like absolutely no moral obligation for you to work at this point. You can just like, you know, chill. So that's nice. And above all, make tiny games. this is like kind of personal, but I really think making the small and like extremely polished experiences is probably one of the best things you could do. I mean, making big games, they're great, but they just like, I feel like you kind of, it's really disrespectful to yourself a bit. I mean, obviously, I'm supportive of doing big games, but it's like during every development cycle, there's going to be like a big slump that you hate your own game, and the shorter and tinier your game is, like the shorter that time of feeling, absolutely, depressed as hell is going to be. So if you're going to do a game that's like 2 years of development or like a year of development, like no, you're going to like have a really long time that you hate the game. So only do it if you're really, really sure. And I really love playing small, tiny kind of stuff because it's like, you're kind of expressing yourself as an artist, and being able to play these kinds of small experiences, especially when they make a lot of it, it really like you get to know someone better. And I think that's really valuable. So if you're like doing a game jam or whatever, and you have like 84 hours, or you're doing like game a month, pick a game that you can finish in 6 hours. Even if you have a month, pick a game you can finish in 6 hours, because then you can spend a lot of the month thinking about your game, and when you're working on it, you can get it finished pretty quickly, right? So if you feel like during the month suddenly you already start working on the game, but you actually really hate it, it's really easy to finish because you scoped for like 6 hours and you have like a whole month. And if you really like the game, then good news, the game is already done, and now you can like polish the hell out of it and make it bigger if you really want to. But get to a point where you can finish it as fast as possible. And finally, if your game has a beginning and an end, it is finished. So if you're currently stuck on like a really big project and you spend so much time on it and you're stressing the hell out because you feel like this was supposed to be like your magnum opus or whatever, just as long as it has a beginning and an end, you're totally free to put it on the internet, and people can judge it for what it is. So yeah, that was a really short talk. I think I talked too fast. Anyways, thanks for listening. I can do questions, I guess, if there are any questions. Oh my God. Okay. Where do you take inspiration, or how do you get ideas for every project? So this kind of goes into my like live your life theory. You just like, if you're always like open for ideas, it'll just like come to you naturally. It's really important to just like go out and live your life, and actively live your life, like do stuff. Now, I think if you're just like sitting inside all the time, like all the ideas you can come up with games are limited to what you see on the internet and like the corners of your room. But if you're constantly going out and experiencing stuff, you're gonna have like a lot of inspiration for games. So that's really cool. And you really want to be constantly thinking about like, how can I turn this thing into a game? I mean, that's like my approach to it. How do you know when you are done with a game? That's if it has a beginning and an end. I mean, that's pretty much it. It's also like a personal thing, I guess, because you're probably like thinking like, this is, most people, I think they're probably like, I'm done with the game when I feel like it is what I can think I can make it, but I don't feel like that's true. You're done with it when whenever it has an end. So if you're really fucking tired of your game and you hate it, just give an end to it, put it on the internet, and then you're done with the game. What do you recommend to be good enough at? Okay, what do you recommend to be good enough at multiple skills to make coherent games solo? I mean, it helps to have as much skills as possible. But I think like for me personally, you don't really need to be good at art as in like you need to be a terrific painter or an exceptional modeler or whatever. You just need to have like a good sense of aesthetics. If you're I did a graphic design before I did games, which was really good because it gives you like a great base of like, you know, something looks good because, you know, the colors are right and, you know, there's contrast and stuff. And that's probably like the most important thing to know. Like, even if your game are just cubes and stuff, if your cubes have like a nice contrast with the background and the colors, you know, are like right, you know, it's gonna look good. And that's why like post-processing and shaders is really it's really helpful, you know, because that kind of does it for you. Like if you do kind of like a shader where it limits your colors to like Game Boy colors, you can almost put like whatever in there and it's going to look good just because it's like, you know, people, they're good colors, you know, you can't go wrong with 4 colors. So that's like a good technique. Just like, I think like GDCamp games, they are really good at this. You know, the guys who did Going Under, I mean, they really make like a shader for every game, you know, and then like the whole game is based around that shader. So really, shaders are like the holy grail of art styles, in my opinion. Do you need to be good at many different things to develop a game, like art, programming, etc.? And how do you learn them? Okay, so I did go to school for games, so that's like a disclaimer. So and that's really great because like I learned a lot of like hard skills, you know, like modeling software and, you know, like Photoshop and Unity, of course. But I mean, there are lots of people who do really amazing stuff with like really like much simpler tools. It's less about, I mean, every skill you have will definitely help you, and the more things you are good at is great. But how many you actually need? If you're able to use a tool that you can make games with, that's pretty much all you need. Like almost all the assets for like spoofware are just like public domain images, and everyone can like steal public domain images. Okay, not steal, use public domain images. So you don't really need to, you know, you don't really need to have any skills to do that. You just need to know how to apply them, you know like contrast and color or whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to advise people to go to school just because, you know, in a lot of countries it's really fucking expensive to go to school. I went to Belgium. I mean, I live in Belgium, and schools are kind of like free-ish, so that's great. But I mean, you can learn all of that stuff yourself. It's just harder. Just like, yeah, just know you don't need to be an expert at any tool just to be good enough to make a game with it, you know. And what if you can't find an end to your game? If you can't find an end to your game, cut to black and add the text, the game has ended. You know, people will probably call it very avant-garde, and you know, people will probably read more into the end than you think. So, I mean, a good way to end your game is just closing the application, and most of the time, you know, it's fine. Just need to know, like, not every game will be like your masterpiece. And if you're really stuck at a point where you don't know how to end your game, closing the application is probably good enough, because it's really more about being done with the game and moving on to the next thing, more than is, you know, really, you know, this is like your masterpiece, you know, because it's not. You know, you're going to make a lot of games in your life, and a lot of them are going to be shit, and maybe some of them are going to be good with shit endings, and, you know, who cares? You know, maybe some gamers we will say like, I really thought the ending was shit, but in the end you won because you finished the game and you put it on the internet, and that's like, that's really good. What was the longest time you spent on a single game? That's really hard to say, but I never work like every day during like game a month. I've never worked like 31 sessions, you know, like every day working like on the game. But I think the longest I've worked on a game is probably like 40 to 50 hours for like game a month. I guess the longest I've worked was for like the Spookware sequel for the Dwellex collection. I think that was like almost like 60 hours. But it's really, I mean, it's still not like that much. It's just, it's really hard to get working, to get in that mindset, like today I'm going to work on my game, and you open the editor and you kind of do it. But if you've been thinking about what you're going to do really long, then by the time you're at your editor, you know exactly what you want to be doing. So yeah. What do you do at Nighthome, and how did you get hired? I work at Nighthome. For the people that didn't know, I do. I work as a coder on Shovel Knight Dig, which is really cool. I don't know if I can say exactly what I've been working on, so I won't. But I'm doing coding on the game, which is really fun. It's actually kind of good for my soul, in the sense that like Shovel Knight, it's not really that much of a narrative game. It's just like gameplay, and being able to like every day just get like that urge of the like, I'll make a very gameplay game. I can get like that urge, satisfy that urge with like Shovel Knight. So by the time I'm working my own stuff, I can do like weird experimental stuff and feel good about it, because I'm never like, constantly thinking, oh, what if I made like a real platformer, I don't know if that makes sense, but how did I get hired? I don't know, I just made like a lot of games, and they put a post on Twitter, like, we're looking for people. And I sent them an email like, hey, I make a lot of games. And they hired me, pretty much. Well, they did. I had to do a test, but yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I mean, I think it helped that I did a lot of games, because that's also a good thing about Game a Month. You really get like an impressive portfolio. If you have like 30 games on your portfolio, even if they're all shit, most of the people that are hiring people are not actually going to play many of the games. So if like 2 of them are really good, they'll probably play those if you put them at the top. And all the rest is just like, oh, he does so many games, he must be good, But yeah, hold on. I'm afraid I might be too old to start in game development. Am I being stupid about this? Definitely. It's like, everyone can make games. I do believe them. It's not really, you just need to realize it's, you don't really, I don't know, you don't have to do that much, to work on a game. You don't have to make an MMORPG or like even a platformer or whatever. A really good book on this topic is The Rise of the Video Game Zinesters, which is a great book. I forgot the name of the person who wrote it, but if you want to get like inspiration for like, how should I start getting into games, that's like a good way to start, because it's like, it introduces you to the concept, like if you make like an image, and when you press on something and other images come, that's also a game, and you're a perfectly valid game developer if you do that. So don't look at like, Call of Duty when you're working on games, because you're never going to make Call of Duty. But yeah, you're never too old. Actually, it might be great. Like if we had like more 80-year-olds making video games, they would probably make so much more interesting stuff than other people, just because they are, so old. They have a completely different view on video games. So I definitely encourage everyone from all facets of life to be making games, just because, you're always going to make like valuable stuff. So, where do you take inspiration, or how do you get ideas for every project? I think I already answered that, but just like living life and just like looking at stuff and being like, can I turn this into a video game? That's like a good way to think. Like for No Players Online, I was working, I was at school doing like an exchange with Breda. It's like the ECAD is the name of the school. I did like an exchange there, and we had to do like a map for a multiplayer game. And honestly, like the idea for No Players Online was, could I turn this into a horror game? And that's like an empty map in a horror game. Sure, yeah, that's No Players Online. So just whenever you're doing something, anything, like taking a walk, or just, you could probably turn it into a video game. And that's probably most of the time that's where the best ideas come, because those ideas are like based on your personal experience. If you're making Mario, like the person who made Mario, or like Zelda, like Zelda was based on going exploring caves when he was a child. Zelda wasn't based on other video games. Like, don't base your games on other video games. I feel like a lot of people do that, but it's really, you're just like recycling like the end product of an idea. Most games most good games are based not on video games, but on like experiences and stuff. And if you're going to base your game on another game, you're just going to take it as face value and like forget what it was really about. Players Online was a huge success and was featured everywhere. Can you tell us a bit about that experience? I didn't expect it to be such a huge success. I think a large part of it was like the ARG stuff that added to it. Well, when we launched the game, like it did pretty well, and there were like already like YouTube videos and stuff. And I saw one video of someone, I think I added like a small Easter egg to the game. If you played it again, like the one line of dialogue was different, and they discovered that and were like, oh, there must be more to this game. And then I made like an entire mystery that you could like reveal and like solve and stuff. And that's probably like a big reason why there was such a huge success, because I think people really like mysteries and ARGs and stuff. But I mean, it was a cool experience, getting like emails from complete strangers with like the title "No Players Online" and no content in their email. That's like a really cool experience. Yeah, I definitely want to make like a big version of the game someday. I feel like I have to, but it's encouraging. But it's really, I feel like it's also dangerous, because if you read too much into like comments and like gamers having like hot takes on your game, you're going to start hating it. So if you're ever like in a situation where your game is taking any kind of ground or whatever, like don't read too much comments. That'll probably keep you sane. When you finish a game, do you get back to it to add features or polish or a bit more? Usually when I publish a game on my Edge, I never open the project again, unless there's like a really bad bug or something. But I much rather like to make like sequels, I guess, or like reimagining or like bigger versions of a game, rather than going back to it and updating it. But I don't know. I think I would like to do it. I don't know if you know like Modus Interactive, but he did like a small series of games where it's like he made a game and then he made like an updated version where it's like completely different, and then he put it on the next day, and he did it like 4 days. That's like really cool. I feel like doing like expansions to games would probably be cool to try it, but I haven't done it before. Then what do you recommend to be good enough at hold on. I think I did all the questions. Okay, wait. What is a skill you get from games that applies well to everything else in your life? I think it's like and not caring about stuff you make. That's probably just because I did so many games, and like I said, if you do a lot of games, like the emotional weight of the project is way less. So like finishing stuff is easier, and that's like a good like philosophy in general. I mean, okay, maybe not for everything in your life, but whenever you're making anything, just make it best you can, I guess. But like, don't spend too much time on it. It's much more valuable to just have like a thing finished, and that's like really applicable to a lot of stuff in life and art in general, mostly. I think. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. Oh my God, I did way too fast. Oh no. Yeah. Okay, I think I answered all the questions. Nice. Okay. How long do I still have? Still have like 20 minutes, I think. Oh, 15 minutes. I don't know what I should do. I should message someone. Oh, God. Okay. Hi. Okay. Yeah, I should probably help them. I don't think there are any questions left, but unless you have a question. No. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. On that note, it is wrapped up. Thanks for listening to me rambling for 30 minutes about finishing games. I hope whatever you're working on right now, that you finish it, or like at least, your next project, you might think, oh, what if I make like a really small game, but like actually a small game, and like finish it within a week, which is really hard to do, but give it a shot. And if you do game a month, let me know. I like people doing game a month. More people should do it. Okay, that's my closing notes. Thanks.